Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Friday workshop. Alright, so first solver that I'll cover for this week. I can probably get through two solvers real quickly and then start addressing your guys' questions here. So the bar direction and the bar length, those are pretty simple solvers here. So let's we'll start with the bar direction. However, first let me name my BloodHound system here first. So I'll hit the change button there, and that brings up the save as dialog. And I already have a naming convention going on here, so let's I'll use last week's name and I'll just update it to today, the 20th already. Man. Alright, so the bar direction solver, probably one of the simplest to use. Even though it is pretty simple, it does get used quite often, right? Because it's a very easy way to make sure that the bar is pointed, in the correct direction of the trade that you want. So let me stretch this chart out here. So it's kind of good. I'm on a range chart here. So you can see the filled in candles are up candles. And actually, sorry, let me reverse that. I thought I had this convention reversed. So for those of you who have been trading for a long time, might know that charts, before computers, charts, used to get your charts printed in black and white, and so up bars were always white, so they were hollow, and down bars were always filled in black, so they were always solid. And let's see, let me set that as a default. There we go. Okay, so to keep with the old time convention here, so the hollow bars are up bars and the down bars are filled in bars, and so we can simply see that the direction, the bar direction solver, right, you get a long signal when the bar's pointed up, and what it's looking at is the body of the bar. So you'll notice some of these doji range candles, right? So this this hammer, this doji hammer, and this falling star doji here, right? There's no output from this solver, right? It's blank. So the body does have to have, or the bar does have to have a body in order for the bar direction solver to work. So we have been asked a couple times to add another option in here, such as a body option, so that this bar direction solver could be used with the doji. I guess what I'm thinking is that we could compare the closing price to the previous closing price. So yeah, we might throw that in there. But for now, if you're using the bar direction solver on a range chart, right, and you get these dojis, then the way you can, the workaround for that to know what the direction of the bar is you could use the comparison solver and just compare the closing price. You could use compare the closing price of this bar to the closing price of the previous bar, right? So that's one way you could get around using the bar direction, on a range chart, something like that. And so we'll see that, right, there are a few options with this, right? So you can make sure that there's a minimum thickness of the body. So right now, right, this just requires one tick, so it's a one tick minimum. If I set this to 0, and oh, look at that. looks like we've got a new option thrown in here. 0 ticks. Huh. It's great. Jeremy every once in a while throws stuff in there, and either I forget about it or he just throws stuff in there, and I don't get known about it. So interesting. So look, when I did that, the doji there got filled in, and let's see. Doesn't look like that's quite what we want here. So yeah, I think allowing this 0 ticks was just an oversight there. So we'll get that fixed here in the next update. So keep in mind that should be 0 ticks. I mean 1 tick. Sorry, in order to work correctly. So it used to be that this 1 was the minimum value you could put in there. You couldn't put a 0 in there. So that's what I was trying to demonstrate, that originally if you put a 0 in there, it would default back to 1. But we can also, that setting's there just so you can make sure that there's a certain thickness of a body. So now we can see here on some of these candles here, the body is, let's see, yeah, that body there is only 1 tick thick. So and we're with a setting of 2 ticks, means you had to have a 2 tick body or thicker. Alright, so next we have a mode. This mode doesn't do anything when the number of bars is set to 1. There's really no functionality here, but the mode comes into play if we set the number of bars to 2 or more. So let's see, here's let me set this back to 1 tick to help illustrate this. Alright, so now using the number of bars, setting that to 2 simply just requires 2 bars in the same direction here. So there we go, such as that. So in this area here, right, the bars are, there's no 2 bars in a row of the same direction. Right, so remember this doji here doesn't count, right? That doesn't have a body, so that doesn't count. Then we have a down bar, and then an up bar, down bar, up bar. So therefore, right, there's no 2 bars in the same direction here in this area. And then of course if we go over here, we can see we have 2 down bars in a row. Right, so this can be useful, if you're just simply requiring, needing at least 2, 3, or maybe 4 bars in the same direction, right? So, some systems, want to try and eliminate, especially I guess on a range bar, this looks to be pretty helpful, where you're just getting price consolidating like this, and the bars are just flipping up and down. This can actually be pretty common in oil, where oil in a range chart, you'll see this quite a bit, where price is consolidating like this, and so you might want to stay out of that. And so looking for at least 2 bars in a row of the of the same direction might be helpful in filtering out this consolidation area, right? And of course, if I set this to 3, you guys guessed it, it's going to require 3 bars in a row of the same direction, such as, there we go. So we got 1, 2, 3 bars in the same direction. Okay, so now I can demonstrate what the mode does. So in percent, let me take these indicators off, stretch this up. So if we look in percent, right, we can see the output is climbing up with the number of bars. So if we look at this one, right, so the output of BloodHound here is 1/3, right? Since my number of bars is set to 3, it's going to count up when it finally gets to 3 bars in a row. So if we look here, this is our first up bar, right? So since it found 1 up bar out of 3 that's required, the output is going to be 1/3. And then when it finds a second bar, so I'll put 2 arrows here denoting a second bar. So what the solver is doing is it's having to look back. It's having to look back 3 bars to try and find 3 up bars in a row. And so when it looks back 3 bars, right, we found 2 up bars. And so therefore we can see the output here is 2/3, right? So the solver's output is 0.66, which is the same as 2/3. So if we keep stepping forward to the next bar, so the solver's still looking back 3 bars. It finds two up bars, but this one's a down bar, so it's only found 2 up bars out of the 3, and so the output stays at 2/3. And then when it steps forward 1 more bar, so now in our look back period here we find 3 up bars in a row, and then finally our output reaches 1 or 100%. So alright, so that's what percentage is doing, right? It's just simply taking the number of bars in a row that it finds and, you know, dividing it by the number of bars required. So if we change the mode to all or nothing, that just gives us a nice, clean, simple output to understand. So now we can see that simply there's just no output until we get 3 bars in a row. So right there, so we had three down bars in a row, and when it gets to the 3rd one, we can see the output starts plotting. Right. Alright, so now the last setting here, start bars ago. So that's yeah, we'll focus on this bar here. So starting bars ago, setting it to 0. 0 means the current bar, right? So essentially the output matches up exactly with when it finds, right, our 3rd bar in a row. So if I set this to 1, what it's going to do is it's going to offset it 1, right? So if we look now, right, our long output went away when it found this 3rd bar, but if I step forward, we can see now the output was shifted forward a bar. So really what that's doing is we're offsetting our looking area. We're offsetting it back 1 bar. So with this bar being the current bar, if we want to start 1 bar ago, basically this white triangle is defining our look back period. So we actually are saying we want to start looking for 3 bars in a row 1 bar ago, looking back 1 bar ago. So if I set this to 2, then once again what we're doing, if this is the current bar, we're saying go back 2 bars and then look for 3 bars in a row and tell me if you find 3 bars in the same direction. So Normally, I speculate most people are probably going to want to keep that at 0, but that option is there if needed. Alright, so that simply is it for the bar direction solver. It's really just a simple, useful filter. It's typically used as just a simple filter to make sure that the bar is going in the direction of the trade that you want. So some other uses, probably kind of a second common use, let's see, would be, let's say, let's work on this right here. So in this area, let me draw an arrow. So on this bar, right, say someone is looking for a particular reversal area, and depending on the bar types that you're using, it could be minute, range, Renko. I've seen some people system where, when they're looking for a reversal, they want to make sure that the previous bar was in the opposite direction of the trade. So let's just say someone's, trade rules, say that, hey, this is good for a short trade, but we have to make sure that the previous bar was an up bar moving up into, like our red moving average. We need an up bar moving up into the moving average before, price bounces off of it and moves down. So the system might require this to be confirmed, a confirmed up bar. So you could use this solver to do that as well. And so to look back one bar, we can use the start bar as a go. We'll set that to 1. Alright, so what that did is we can see, right, that we have these two long outputs, but they're actually coming from these two up bars, and so we can see they're shifted forward 1. So what we did is we took the bar direction from this previous bar and we shifted it forward onto the actual bar that would give us a short signal. But if we're looking for a short signal, then we also need to reverse the output, right? So we don't want a long output if we're looking for a short trade, so we need to flip the output here. And you might think that we could just use the invert, but the invert doesn't always work. And to give you an illustration, yeah, take a look. Let me grab an arrow. So take a look. Right here we have a doji. And remember, we're using the start bar as a go set to 1. So the signal from this doji actually got shifted forward onto the next bar. And if you look at the output, we're getting a long and a short output, which probably is not desired. So inverting it doesn't always work. So if we want to invert, right, so if we want to invert this output to a short to confirm this short trade, then what we'll have to do is we'll have to start working on the logic board. And so let me put the bar direction on there. And we could use the long-short modifier. Like so. Alright, so now you can see what we did have a long signal, now they've been reversed to a short signal, right, on this bar, and that would help confirm, this short trade here. It would help confirm that, hey, we had a long bar prior to a reversal bar for a short trade. So that's probably kind of a secondary or a third common use that I've seen for the bar direction, essentially. All right. Well, I'm just going to keep this example kind of short and simple. And let's see. Next, I'll go into the bar length. We'll cover that next, and hopefully as I'm working on this, I'll get some questions in from you guys. Alright, so let me pause for a moment and take a look and see what's come in. I'm going to see if these are questions or comments. Alright, so Kenneth is asking, can he look for 2 or 3 up bars followed by at least 2 down closed bars? So yes, definitely. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, so I'm just going to grab a couple of new bar direction solvers. All right. So let's look for 3 up bars and then followed by 2 down bars. All right, so we're going to look for 3 bars, and to keep this easy to visualize, I'll set this to all or none, and let's see if we can find a spot on the chart here. Okay, great. So it looks like we do have 3 up bars. In fact, we actually have more than that. And then followed by 2 down bars. Alright, I just fill those in there. Okay, great. So we've got several up bars in a row and 2 down bars in a row. So we can see when we get to the 3rd up bar, right, we get our output. So next, let's look for the 2 down bars. So we're going to need another bar direction here. And we're looking for 2 bars in a row. And I'm going to set the mode to all or nothing as well. Alright, so when we get to our 2nd down bar, right, we get this short signal there. So I take it, you know, we'll build a short signal out of this. So now, so let's see, this solver here, let me give this a name. So, right, so this is looking for two bars in a row, and this one's looking for three bars. I guess 3 bars prior. All right, so this 2 bars in a row solver here, right? It's giving us a signal, a short signal on the 2nd down bar. Now, what we need to do is we need to take the signals, you know, the signals from this 3 bars in a row solver, right, which is looking for these 3 up bars. We need to get these long signals here over to the bar that actually generates the short signal to actually confirm that we got three up bars and then 2 down bars, right? So we need to take these long signals shift them over 2 bars, and also reverse them. Alright, so in order to shift them over, we can set that to 2. So there we go. So now we have a long signal on the bar that's going to generate the final short signal here. So, but now we need to reverse it. So that way we're getting a short signal out of this to line up with our short trade. So let's see. How about if I just use the long short modifier like so. There we go. So now it's reversed short. This solver, right, the solver that's looking for 2 bars, our 2 down bars, is also giving us a short. And so now we need to connect both of those solvers together with an AND node. Like so. Right, and there we go. So as long as we have 3 up bars in a row and 2 down bars, we'll get a trade signal out of that. So let's kind of look back here. Right, so nothing here because we only got 2 up bars, and we didn't quite get anything here because we happen to have a doji. Let's see. Well, yeah, we had a doji, but also there weren't 2 up bars either. So this down bar kind of messed it up over here. Okay, here we go. So we got 5 down bars and then 2 up bars for the opposite long signal there. All right, so there you go, Kenneth. That's how you do that. So that's kind of a good demonstration, of using the start bars ago to shift a prior condition forward onto the final condition. All right, so I guess another way of thinking of the start bars ago is a way of looking for a prior condition, which would be, looking for our down bars and then shifting it forward onto the final condition, right? And the final condition is looking for these up bars. So, and then when you connect them together with an AND node, you get your one final signal, right? All right, good question there, Kenneth. Okay, so let me go into the bar length, and then I see there's some other questions here I'll get to. All right, so bar length. This can be useful when you're looking for volatility in the market. So let's see, range charts. The bar length really isn't going to do anything on a range chart because the bars are all the same length. So let's switch over to a minute chart here. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm going to name my logic template here. Okay. So simply put, this is just going to measure the length of the bar. It's going to measure it from the low point to the high point, to the high price. So, we've also had some suggestions to add an option here so we can actually measure the length of the body instead of the total length of the bar. So yeah, so that's probably an option that we will throw in later on here. But for now, right? This is just measuring the total length of the bar, right? So when you're measuring bar lengths, you're measuring, you know, how volatile the market is. So that's what the ATR indicator is doing, right? The ATR, average true range, is measuring the length of the bars and then averaging them out. You know, so one thing we could do, so we could use this bar length. You know, the easiest way to use it is to look for long bars. So let me change my distances from ATRs to ticks, because ticks is a lot easier to visualize on the chart. Alright, so let's see if we have any bars that are 10 ticks or larger. And let's see here. Actually, yeah, that's not going to do anything. There we go. I'm going to set both the max and the min to 10 ticks, and that will get rid of the fuzzy logic part here. So with the max and the min both set to the same, right, I kind of get this all or none output here. So we can see, so what this is identifying, right, so the bar length doesn't denote any directional trade, right? It's just a simple measurement. So it's a simple measurement of volatility, and of course volatility never tells you what direction to go. It just states that there's a lot of market movement. So we can see that essentially the solver is going to mark any bars that are 10 ticks or larger, like so. All right, so that's one kind of common use for this. Another common use is we could use this to identify kind of consolidation. So for short bars, let's see. Well, yeah, I guess I'll go into that, and then I'll come down here and cover what the period does. So. All right, so setting it up this way, we have found, you know, essentially large bars, 10 ticks or more. So if we want to look for smaller bars, we can use the other output here. So if we take a look at the output, and let me just stretch this out. So the default setting that we were using originally was the at or above 10 ticks. Right? So at or above 10 ticks is when we got an output. So when the bar is, you know, at 10 ticks or taller, then we got an output. So if we wanted to find small bars, then we want to use the other output, so at or below 10 ticks. So we'll set that to 1, and this will identify bars that are smaller than 10 ticks. So if for some reason, you know, we wanted to identify, you know, really small bars like 5 ticks or smaller, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these both to 5 ticks so I get a nice clean kind of digital output. And so we can use this to identify, you know, very small bars, and you know, that can be useful to identify consolidation areas in the market. So you know, if you're, let's say for an example, if you're building some kind of a volatility breakout system, you know, part of the requirements for a volatility breakout system is, you know, typically you're looking for kind of consolidation, right? So you can see that this area in here, has a lot of consolidation and a lot of small bars, and then you're hoping for a breakout in one direction or the other, right? So in this case, we got a breakout to the upside. So you could use the at or below to help you identify areas, you know, where the bars got really short and kind of consolidated, right? So this may not be the only kind of condition you're looking for, right? You also might be using the Bollinger Band, you know, to see if the Bollinger Bands are squeezing together. You might be using a moving average to see if a moving average is flattening out as well to kind of identify consolidation, right? So there's various components for identifying consolidation. So I'm not trying to say that this is the only way or the best way. It's just a part of the process, you know, of finding consolidation here. So let me up this to maybe six ticks, and so we can see that there's only a couple of bars here, you know, in this area that are 6 ticks or smaller. So to help kind of smooth this out, I can use this period setting to help smooth this out. So let's see. What if I'll use I don't know, a 6 period here, and the default setting is actually average. So of course, whenever you average something, that's going to add a little bit of delay, right? That's essentially when you're averaging something, you're like using the SMA indicator to average stuff out. But we can see that after, you know, a couple of these short bars went by, you know, we did identify that, you know, this area towards the end of it, that this area is kind of consolidating here. So if we want to identify some more, we might need to up the minimum value just a little bit, and let's up that a little bit. There we go. So now using 7 ticks, right, we can see we've kind of identified this consolidation area a little bit more. So you can see that, you know, this is just one component to kind of find consolidation, right? So we do have, you know, we did get a little consolidation and a move up. You know, so once again, this wouldn't be your only way to find consolidation. It's just a part of the process. Let's see. All right, we also have different modes here. So average simply is just looking at the last 6 bars, and it's averaging out their bar length. And as long as the average of the bar lengths, you know, are below 7 or are 7 or below, then the solver will, you know, mark those bars. We can also say, you know what, just find the smallest bar within a 6 period look back, in a sense. So what this would be doing, let me draw a couple of drawing aids here. So all right, so this square is 6 bars long. So with this being our current bar, and with our period being at 6, what we're going to do is we're going to look back 6 bars, and if any of these 6 bars in this look back is 7 ticks or smaller, then basically our condition has been met. So on this bar, let me draw an arrow, right? So if this is the current bar, then what the solver is saying, since there's an output here from the solver, it's saying that during our look back, it did find at least one bar that was 7 ticks or smaller. So let's see. Let me find a spot where there's no output and see if that exists somewhere here. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Alright, let me clear my drawing aids and alright. So this is the current bar. And let me draw a little rectangle here looking back 6 bars. There we go. So I can see as I'm looking back, my assumption would be that this bar is smaller than 7 ticks. Right? So that's why this bar here was marked, where it was identified by the solver. So that's why we have an output, because when we look back 6 bars, we did find one bar that was smaller than 7 ticks. Now if we step forward onto the next bar, alright, so here's our current bar. Let's move our look back. Now if we look back within this range, none of these bars are 7 ticks or smaller. So therefore there's no output on this bar. Alright, so we can see that essentially this really short bar is outside of our look back period. And if we step forward again, right, once again, all the bars within this 6 period range are larger than 7 ticks. Let's go to the next bar, and so we get to this next bar, and we can see that actually the current bar now, so the current bar is actually, you know, it looks pretty short. So this, let's see, this bar is 51 cents up to 50. So this bar here is only 5 ticks tall. So this is smaller than 7 ticks. So within our look back of 6 bars, the actual current bar is only 5 ticks, and so therefore we got an output. So, you know, if we keep stepping forward, so if we take a look at, you know, this short bar here, we can see that within the look back, you know, all of these bars had an output from the solver because this short bar was found within this 6 bar period. But then when we get to 7 bars away, now we can see this short bar is outside of our look back area. And so now this bar here was not painted because all the bars within our look back are now 7 ticks or larger. Right, so what I was trying to illustrate here is that when you set the mode to smallest, what it's doing is it's going to look through all 6 bars and it's going to find the smallest bar and use the smallest bar to meet this condition of at or below 7 ticks. Now, if I set the mode to largest, then simply what we're going to do is when the solver looks back 6 bars, it's going to use the largest bar that it finds and check to see if the largest bar is 7 ticks or smaller. And we can see here that this is probably not going to happen very often. So, oh, here we go. All right, so let's analyze this here. All right. So let me just set this up. All right. So the arrow's on our current bar, and we can see here's our look back area. And as we look back, I would assume that this bar is probably our largest bar. So let me measure the length of this bar. So we got 61. I'm sorry, 62 to 69. So this this bar is at 7 ticks. Yep. So, and just a little side note, little side tip here. This bar could actually be like 1/100th of a tick larger than 7 ticks. So one thing I've noticed about oil is that oil is probably the most notorious instrument to actually see trade prices come through in 1/100th of a dollar or 1,000th of a dollar. In other words, 1/10 of a penny. So you'll see that oil doesn't necessarily trade on the tick. You'll see orders come through that trade on 1/2 a tick or 1/10 of a tick and so forth. Just kind of keep that in mind if you're using oil as your example here. So this bar, could be 7.1 ticks or 7.01 ticks tall or something like that. So just as a mental side note, but essentially, so in our look back period, we're looking for the largest bar, and so this is our largest bar, and it was basically just over 7 ticks. So it was, so therefore, it didn't meet our requirement. So since it's slightly larger than 7 ticks, it didn't meet our requirement. And if we go step forward 1 bar, now, as we look back 6 bars, right, we find the largest bar, which I guess my guess would be this is the largest bar, and it's 4 ticks. Let's see, that one's 4 ticks. Okay, so we have a couple of bars that the largest bars, we have a couple here that are only 4 ticks. So those are the largest bars within our look back period, and of course those 4 tick bars are smaller than the 7 ticks that we're looking for, and so therefore it qualifies, and we get an output from this solver. So a simple way of thinking of this is that if you're looking for the largest bar, in your look back area, that's going to be a lot more stringent. It's going to be a lot more restrictive. versus using the smallest bar. Right, so it's pretty easy to find, you know, the smallest bar to be, you know, smaller than 7 ticks. That's going to be pretty common and easy to do. As we can see, it seems like most of the time there's always at least one bar that's 7 ticks or smaller most of the time. So, and if we use largest, then what that's saying is that most of the time there's always going to be a bar that's 7 ticks or larger within our look back period. So, all right, I think, yeah, that pretty much sums that solver up. That solver is not too complicated. There's kind of 2 different ways of using that solver. So let me see if there's any kind of questions on this. Okay, I don't see any questions on this, but I see some just some common questions for these training workshops. So, all right, we'll just we'll leave it at that for the bar direction and the bar length. And next Friday, let's see, next Friday I'll pick up with the Dorsian swing trend, and if we have enough time, I'll get to the swing volatility. All right, so from here on out, I'll cover your guys' questions. All right, so Eldon's asking, how would you build a solver to trigger a signal when 2 moving averages are at least 3 ticks apart? All right, so we want to make sure that 2 moving averages are at least 3 ticks away from each other. So, okay, let's take a look at that. Alright, so I already have 2 moving averages on my chart, and we'll identify when they're 3 ticks away from each other. Let's see. So it kind of looks like, oh, let me get this arrow here. So it looks like we're probably going to identify this area here. Yeah, this looks like this is about 3 ticks or more away. Alright, so to do this, we're going to use a comparison solver. Right, so we're comparing one indicator plot to another indicator plot. In other words, we're comparing 2 moving average plots here. So let's okay. Alright, so we're looking for a 3 tick separation. So I just grabbed a comparison solver. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the moving averages that I already have on my chart. So, right, so I have an EMA 20 and an SMA 14. So let's plug that in here. Alright. So I already have an SMA 14. You know, it's the default setting here, so I'll just change this bottom one in indicator B. I'll change this to an EMA 20 to match what's on my chart. Alright, so we're interested in a 3 tick separation here. So I'm gonna, let's see, yeah, I could probably just do it just by setting one of these. And alright. right, so I can see, right, so if we look at BloodHound's output, right, we can see that the output is getting really small when these moving averages are starting to cross, right? In other words, these two plot lines are really close to each other. So, yeah, if I set both the large amount and small amount to 3 ticks, that's going to give me a cleaner look, right? It's going to get rid of that fuzzy logic look, if that's what you want. And so right now it is telling me when the 2 or 3 ticks away, and it's directional. So with the SMA 14 is the white line on the chart. So if the SMA is below the EMA, which is the red line, and more than 3 ticks away, we're going to get a short output. So if this is kind of a non-directional, then what we can do is we can simply set these outputs here as well, and it makes it non-directional. So you can see we're getting a long and a short output. So this is just identifying a condition, right? It's not a directional condition anymore. It's just a general condition has been met. And so we can see now that the comparison solver is telling us when there's 3 ticks of separation now. And in these blank areas, so this blank area in here is telling us that the 2 moving averages are 3 ticks or closer to each other. Right? So just to go over this once again, right, I put one of my moving averages in indicator A, and typically when you're using the comparison solver, you put the faster moving average in indicator A. You know, if we're using it in a non-directional sense, as it is right now, it doesn't matter if this is the faster moving average or the slower one. It doesn't matter, but just in general, you'll want to put the faster moving indicator, you know, in indicator A, right? And then, of course, indicator B is the other moving average. And since we're looking for 3 ticks of separation, right, I put 3 ticks in a large amount and small amount. So by doing that, it gave us this nice clean digital output. Right. If I left the small amount at 0 ticks, we can see that we kind of get this fuzzy logic where we get this analog type of an output. So what it's telling us is that the closer the moving averages get to each other, right, the smaller the output will be. And when the 2 plot lines separate by 3 ticks or more, right, the output eventually expands out to 1 or 100%. And then the next thing I needed to do is, well, actually, if I set both of these to 3, I believe I can leave the default plots. Yeah. Yeah. So remember the comparison solver, the top 2 long conditions, the top 2 long outputs are set to 1. And I could have actually, as you can see now, I could just leave them to 1. And for the short outputs, these 2 are set to 1 by default. So I could have left them at 1. And when I put a 1 down here, what that did is that created both a long and a short output at the same time. So if I strip that 1 out and put it back to 0, so when you add a brand new comparison solver, you know, this is what the outputs look like. This is their default output here. You can have a 1 and a 1 on top and a 1 and a 1 on the bottom. And so this is the output that you get. And it's directional according to, right, so when indicator A is above indicator B, we get this long output here, right? So the white line, which is the SMA 14, is above the EMA 20, the red line, and we get a long output. And then of course when it reverses, when that SMA is below the EMA, we get a short output. And if you just want to make this non-directional, we can just put a 1 in the opposite outputs there and make it non-directional. Right? So if you read this, when A is here, let me zero these out again. So if we're looking at this area here, right? So when A, we're going to get a long output when A is greater than B, right? And A is the SMA. So the SMA is greater than the EMA because it's above it. And then we get a short output when A, which A is the SMA, when A is less than B, remember B is our EMA. So over here we can see A, which is the white SMA plot, is less than B, which is the red EMA plot. And we'll get a short output when that happens. Oh. And so now if I add a 1 down here to the long output, we're going to get a long output when A is less than B as well. So we can see here A is less than B, and we're getting a long output. But also in the short output, A is less than B, and we set that to 1. So that's why we get the short output. All right. Okay, Eldon, I think that covers it for you. All right, so George is asking, he said, let's see, so on the last week's training session, I recommended on starting with a particular solver to start the learning process. So George is asking which solver that was. Gosh, I don't actually remember making that statement, but I probably said something similar to that. So probably what I've said from time to time is I'll mention what are the two most common, or what are the most common solvers that people use, and the comparison solver is definitely one of the most common solvers used the majority of the time, right? Because as I just demonstrated, the comparison solver, allows you to to compare one plot against the other plot to see what they're doing, right? So in this case, I created a comparison to see when the two plots are more than 3 ticks away. I could also use the comparison solver to detect the opposite. I could use it to detect when two plots, when two indicators are closer, are within 3 ticks of each other. So this solver has a lot of common uses. And let me give this a name first before I continue on here. All right. It's always a good idea to kind of name your solvers here to tell you what they're doing. So that way, when you come back to this a week later, hopefully the name will kind of clue you in to what you built here. So what I could also do with this indicator, if we look at this output here, right, we can see it's identifying when there's 3 ticks of separation. But what if we wanted to know when the moving averages are close to each other? then I could simply, in this is a case where I could use the invert. I could turn the invert output off, and now you can see it's identifying when our moving averages are 3 ticks or closer to each other, or within 3 ticks of each other. All right, so let's see. So George, probably, this is a good first indicator to start working on, since it allows you to compare different things to each other. Right, so you could also, instead of comparing an indicator, you could compare price. So let's see here. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the price of the bar. So I'm using the closing price, and I'm comparing the closing price of the bar to the EMA 20, which is the red line here. And so if we look at this, we can see that whenever the closing price gets within 3 ticks of the EMA, right, the output of that solver turns off. So what this is identifying is that the closing price is more than 3 ticks away from the EMA. So I'm showing you this just to demonstrate that you can compare, the price of a bar to an indicator. So there's lots of different types of comparisons that can be done. So this is probably a good first solver to learn. And probably the second solver that would be good to learn would be to learn to use the threshold solver here. So the threshold solver is used, let me add the MACD on here. Actually, I'm going to use the stochastics. Right, so the threshold solver is commonly used for indicators that run in their own subpanel, and so the stochastics, has its own range, has its own set of values, right? So the stochastic ranges from 0 to 100, and so that's what the threshold solver is used for. So say if you want to know if the stochastics, is below 20 or above, this 80 threshold level, that's what the threshold is used for, to determine when, right, I guess you could use it to determine if the MACD is above or below 0, if the stochastics is above 80 or below 20, those type of things. Right, the CCI runs in its own subpanel, so you could check to see if the CCI is above 100 or below -100, things like that. So threshold solver is a second good solver to work on there. All right, let me delete that, and let me move on to the next one here. All right, yes, RJ's just making the comment that on some of the older videos you'll notice that the threshold solver used to have 4 values, but now it has 5 values. So so we added a 5th threshold level, just because the threshold solver works a little better that way. It's better to have a value C in the middle, so it's better to have, right, two upper values and 2 lower values and then a value in the middle. So that's why we added a 5th threshold solver. Yep. So so when you're looking at the old videos that have 4 threshold values, just you'll want to put is essentially, let's see, let me think this out. So the older videos that show a threshold from A, B, C, and D, right? So there's no E. So what you'll want to do is take the value from D and move it down to E. And you'll want to take the value from C and move it down to D. Right? And then this new value C in the middle, you'll just want to set this value to something in the middle. So always keep in mind that when you're using the threshold, always keep the values in descending order, right? So if you look, if you look at the help description down here, right, this says set A to the highest threshold value. And if we look at E, it says set E to the lowest threshold value. So you always want to set these in descending order, right? So it would be something like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So when you're working with this, always set the highest values at the top and the lowest values in the middle. Okay, you don't want to do something like this. So this may work, but it also may not work. So you don't want a lower value above a higher value, right? So you wouldn't want to do something like this, right? So instead of using 0 there, you'd want to change that to at least 1 or something like that, or better yet, put it to a value in the middle, set it to 2. All right. So, all right. So I hope that kind of helps there, RJ. And so, yes, so RJ made the comment that in the older videos, some conditions required 2 threshold solvers, and by adding a 5th threshold level, by adding a 5th one, we can do a lot of things with just one solver now. So, all right.